My 18-year-old neighbor sneaks into my house every night just to watch me. I never thought I'd tell this story, because it's the kind of thing that feels too strange, too intimate, almost like a secret I wasn't ready to share. But sometimes, the truth has a way of becoming louder than silence. Imagine this. Every night, just as the neighborhood goes quiet, I hear the faint sound of my door clicking open. Not forcefully. Not violently. Just a slow, deliberate turn of the knob. And then he steps in. My neighbor, only 18, with that unreadable look in his eyes. He doesn't say much. He just lingers there, watching me like he's trying to memorize every detail. At first, I told myself it was nothing, that maybe I was imagining it, that maybe he had some reason I couldn't understand. But the truth is I felt it. The weight of his gaze. The way my chest tightened every time his shadow stretched across my room. I wanted to confront him, to tell him this couldn't keep happening. And yet, some part of me didn't stop him. Some part of me wanted to know why. Was it curiosity? Was it loneliness? Or was it something more dangerous, something neither of us dared to name? This story isn't just about the nights he walked in. It's about what those nights revealed. About the way desire creeps in when you least expect it. About the tension between fear and fascination, doubt and discovery. Each step he took into my house pulled me further into a storm I wasn't ready for, but maybe one I secretly needed. So if you're here, stay with me until the end. Because the truth of what happened between us isn't simple. It's messy, it's raw, and it's unforgettable. And I promise you, by the time I reach the last part of this story, you won't be able to look at your own neighbor the same way again. Don't just watch, be part of this journey with me. Subscribe now, turn on the notifications, and let's dive into the kind of story that will leave you questioning the line between fear, desire, and the courage to face what we really want. I always thought of myself as someone who valued privacy. My home was my safe space, a quiet place where I could escape the noise of the world. But lately, it hasn't felt safe at all. Every night around the same hour, I hear it, the almost imperceptible sound of the front door easing open. It's not loud, it's not rushed. It's careful, deliberate. And every time, my pulse begins to race because I know exactly who it is. It's him. Ethan. My neighbor. 18 years old. I live alone in a small house on the edge of town, and his family moved in next door last year. At first, he seemed like any other kid his age, lean, restless, always with earbuds in his ears or a skateboard under his feet. We exchanged polite greetings, sometimes short conversations when his parents were around, but that was it. I never expected him to notice me, let alone walk into my life like this, literally into my house as if he belonged here. The first time it happened, I thought I was dreaming. I'd been lying in bed, drifting between sleep and wakefulness, when I saw his silhouette in the doorway. My heart stopped. He didn't say a word. He just stood there for a while, watching. Then, as quietly as he came, he left. I convinced myself it was some bizarre hallucination. But the second time, I was wide awake. And the third time, I couldn't deny it anymore. Now, it has become a routine, something both unsettling and strangely magnetic. He doesn't come to steal, doesn't rummage through my things, doesn't even touch anything. He just enters, looks at me for a few minutes, and leaves. And I can't lie, part of me hates it, but another part is drawn to it in a way I can't explain. Tonight is no different. I hear the soft creak of the hinges as the door opens. My body tenses. I tell myself to get up, to confront him, to finally put an end to this. But my limbs stay still, almost paralyzed by anticipation. My breath slows as his steps cross the living room. I can see the faint outline of his frame when he reaches the hallway. He hesitates, as if testing the air, before stepping closer to my room. I sit up, flicking on the small lamp by my bed. The sudden glow reveals him fully. Ethan. He freezes like a deer caught in headlights. His dark hair falls messily over his forehead, his chest rises and falls as though he sprinted here, but his eyes, those eyes don't look away. They're steady, locked on me, filled with something I can't decipher. Not guilt, not fear, but something deeper, something that burns quietly beneath the surface. What are you doing here? My voice comes out low, steady, though inside I'm anything but. He doesn't answer right away. Instead, he shifts awkwardly, his hands shoved into the pockets of his hoodie. I just wanted to see you, he says finally, his tone soft, almost too soft to hear. See me? The words echo in my head, strange and heavy. I should be angry, I should demand answers, I should call his parents, but none of those impulses reach my lips. Instead, I lean forward. You can't keep doing this, I tell him. It's not normal. I know, he replies, his gaze dropping to the floor. But I can't help it. Silence stretches between us. My heart pounds so loudly I'm sure he can hear it. I study him in the lamplight, the sharp lines of his jaw, the way his hoodie hangs loosely from his shoulders, the nervous shift of his sneakers on the hardwood floor. He's young, yes, but there's something in his presence that feels older, heavier. Like he's carrying more than he lets on. Why me? I ask finally. That makes him look up again. His eyes are raw, vulnerable, stripped of the casual indifference he usually wears like armor. Because you're different, he says. You don't treat me like a kid. You actually see me. The honesty in his voice hits me harder than I expect. I swallow, trying to keep my composure, but the room feels charged, like the air before a storm. I want to push him away, to draw the line that should have been drawn weeks ago. And yet, a part of me is curious, dangerously curious. He steps a little closer, the light catching on his features. I'll leave if you want me to, he says quietly. Just say it. Tell me you don't want me here, and I'll stop. The challenge in his words lingers in the air. He's giving me control, daring me to end this. My lips part, but the words don't come. Instead, I realize how much I've been waiting for this confrontation, this raw honesty. I should tell him to go. I should. But I don't. Instead, I let the silence speak for me. His breathing slows, his eyes search mine, and I know he feels it too, the pull neither of us fully understands. Then I'll stay, he whispers, almost to himself, and sinks into the chair by my desk like he belongs there. I lie back slowly, my thoughts spiraling. What am I doing? Why am I letting this happen? The tension between us is unbearable, thick with things unsaid. I close my eyes, but every nerve in my body is awake, alive, aware of his presence just a few feet away. Minutes pass, maybe hours, I can't tell. At some point, the silence is broken by his voice. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? He asks, his tone serious, unexpected. The question lingers, sharp and intimate. I open my eyes to find him still watching me, his gaze heavy with something more than curiosity. And for the first time, I realize this isn't just about him sneaking in. It's about something deeper, something dangerous. Because in that moment, I don't want him to leave. The sound of footsteps outside froze both of us in place. My pulse spiked, every nerve in my body on edge. Ethan's eyes darted to the door, then back to me as if silently asking what we should do. For a moment, neither of us breathed. The rhythm of the steps grew louder, closer, until they stopped just outside my porch. I sat upright, my heart hammering in my chest. At this hour, no one ever came by. My neighborhood was quiet, predictable, the kind of place where people kept to themselves. And yet here I was in my bedroom, with my neighbor's 18-year-old son sitting across from me while someone stood just outside. Ethan leaned forward, his whisper sharp but low. Do you get visitors this late? I shook my head. Never. We both stared at the faint shadow under the doorframe, visible because of the porch light seeping in through the blinds. Whoever it was, they weren't knocking. They were just standing there. Watching. Waiting. My throat tightened. Stay here, I told Ethan, though my voice betrayed the fact that I wasn't sure what to do. I got up slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last, and moved toward the living room. The floor creaked under my feet, echoing in the silence. When I reached the door, I peeked through the peephole. My breath caught. It was Ethan's father. His tall frame leaned casually against the porch railing, his arms crossed as if he'd been standing there for a while. His face was difficult to read, part curiosity, part suspicion. I backed away instinctively, my chest tightening. What if he suspected something? What if he already knew his son was here, inside my house, sitting in my room in the middle of the night. I turned back and hurried down the hall. Ethan was already on his feet, his hands pressed against the sides of his hoodie, his eyes wide. "Who is it?" he whispered. "Your dad," I said, barely containing the panic rising in my chest. His face paled. "Shit." We both stood there, caught in the gravity of the moment. I wanted to tell him to sneak out the back door, but it was too risky. The noise would be obvious. The house was too quiet, the walls too thin. Every sound seemed amplified in the stillness. "Stay here," I told him firmly. I walked back toward the door, trying to calm my breathing. When I opened it, Mark straightened, his eyes narrowing as he looked at me. "Hey," I said, forcing a casual smile. "Everything okay?" His gaze swept over me, lingering just a little too long, as though he were trying to read something hidden between my words. "I thought I saw some lights still on," he said. His tone was relaxed, but his eyes probed deeper. "Did you hear something strange earlier?" My mouth went dry. "No," I lied. "Just couldn't sleep. You know how it is." Mark nodded slowly, though his expression didn't soften. "Ethan's not home," he said, his voice edged with irritation. "I assumed maybe he was out back. You haven't seen him, have you?" The weight of the question landed like a stone. I forced myself not to look toward the hallway, where Ethan waited just a few feet away. "No," I answered, my voice steady. "Haven't seen him tonight." The pause. The air between us was thick, suffocating. Finally, Mark gave a small nod. "All right. If you see him wandering around, let me know. Kid thinks he can come and go as he pleases." "Of course," I replied quickly. He held my gaze for one more long moment, as if testing the truth behind my words, then turned and walked back down the steps. The sound of his footsteps faded into the night until everything was quiet again. I shut the door, my hands trembling. When I turned, Ethan was standing there, his face pale and tense. His shoulders sagged with relief when I whispered, "He's gone." But the silence that followed wasn't comforting. It was heavy, loaded with the reality of what just happened. "He's starting to suspect," I said, running a hand through my hair. Ethan shifted uneasily. "I shouldn't have come tonight." The honesty in his voice stung. I wanted to agree, to tell him that this had gone too far, that whatever strange pull existed between us needed to stop before it ruined both of us. But when I looked at him, I couldn't say it. His eyes carried something raw, something unspoken, something I'd been trying to deny since the first night I caught him standing in my doorway. "You can't keep sneaking in," I said instead. My voice was firm, but it lacked conviction. "I know," he admitted. Then, after a pause, he added, "But I also know you're not telling me to stop." The truth in his words sliced through me. My jaw tightened, but I had no defense. He wasn't wrong. I could have ended this tonight. I could have told his father. I could have thrown him out. But I didn't. And that silence was louder than any excuse I could make. He stepped closer, the distance between us shrinking until I could feel the warmth of his presence. "You're scared," he said softly. "So am I. But maybe that's why we're here." The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink, the world outside disappearing until it was just us, two people caught between what we wanted and what we feared. I swallowed hard. "Ethan." Before I could finish, he reached out. His fingers brushed mine, tentative, hesitant, as though testing whether I'd pull away. But I didn't. I couldn't. That single touch sent a shock through me, awakening something I'd tried to bury. It wasn't just about him sneaking in anymore. It was about the connection that had been quietly building between us, night after night, look after look, silence after silence. His voice broke the moment. "Do you want me to go?" The question lingered, dangerous and fragile. My chest tightened. Every rational thought screamed yes. Every instinct told me this was wrong. But the pounding of my heart, the ache in my chest, the pull I couldn't deny, all of it whispered no. I didn't answer. Instead, I let my silence tell him everything. His lips parted as if he wanted to say more, but then he stopped. His hand slipped away, leaving behind the ghost of his touch. He turned toward the window, his voice quiet. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this secret." I stared at him, my pulse racing. What do you mean? He turned back, his eyes meeting mine with a seriousness that sent a chill through me. Because one of these nights, I'm not just going to stand here and watch. One of these nights, I'm going to tell you the truth about why I come here. The words hung in the air, heavy and electric. My chest tightened, 1,000 questions rising inside me. But before I could ask, he moved toward the door. I should go, he said simply. And just like that, he slipped into the night, leaving me standing in the middle of the room, heart pounding, mind racing. I leaned against the wall, my breath uneven. His words replayed in my head. I'm going to tell you the truth. The truth. Whatever it was, it terrified me. The glow of the phone screen lit up the darkness of my bedroom, the words searing into my half-dreaming mind. He's not who you think he is. I sat up instantly, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. The message didn't come from a saved number. No name, no context. Just those 6 words, stark and unsettling. I read them over and over, my pulse racing faster each time. Who could have sent it? And more importantly, what did they know about Ethan that I didn't? For a long moment, I just sat there staring, frozen. My thoughts twisted in a dozen directions. Was it a warning? A threat? Some cruel prank? My first impulse was to call him, to demand answers. But I couldn't. He had just left a few hours ago, his father already suspicious, and if I reached out now, it would feel like admitting to something I wasn't ready to face. Instead, I typed back, "Who is this?" The dots blinked once, then disappeared. No reply. I tried again. "What do you mean?" Silence. I lowered the phone slowly, my chest tightening with unease. I lay awake for the rest of the night, the shadows on the walls growing longer, darker. The silence wasn't peaceful. It pressed against me like a weight. And beneath all that fear was something even more dangerous, curiosity. By morning, I hadn't slept. I moved through the day like a ghost, distracted, my mind locked on that message. Every time I glanced at my phone, I hoped for an answer, but nothing came. That evening, as I stood on the porch trying to clear my head, I saw him. Ethan, leaning casually against his skateboard by his driveway. The late sun hit his hair, casting an orange glow around him. He waved, his smile crooked, like nothing was wrong. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to walk over, to confront him right there in the open. But another part, a larger part, wanted to keep the message to myself until I understood what it meant. He noticed my hesitation, his smile fading slightly as his eyes searched mine. "Rough night?" he asked when I finally walked over. "Something like that," I muttered. For a moment, it felt like the world was normal. Just 2 neighbors talking in the warm dusk. But the memory of his hand brushing mine, his father's footsteps on my porch, and that cryptic text burned like embers beneath the surface. He tilted his head, studying me. "You don't look fine." "I'm just tired," I said. But he didn't believe me. His eyes lingered, suspicious but soft. Did something happen? I wanted to ask him so badly, "What truth are you hiding? What are you not telling me?" But instead, I forced a smile and shook my head. "No, nothing." That night, the pattern repeated. The sound of the door, the faint steps. But this time, I was awake and waiting. When he appeared in the hallway, I turned on the lamp before he could reach my room. He stopped mid-step, caught in the glow, his face tightening with surprise. "We need to talk," I said. His jaw clenched, but he nodded. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The quiet click echoed in my chest like a drumbeat. "You said last night you'd tell me the truth," I reminded him. "So tell me." For a long moment, he didn't answer. He sat on the edge of the chair, his elbows resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on the floor. The silence stretched until I thought he'd never speak. Finally, he looked up. His eyes were raw, unguarded. "I come here because when I'm in my own house, I can't breathe," he said quietly. "It's like the walls are closing in. My dad, he doesn't see me. Not really. He only sees what he wants me to be." The words cracked something inside me. There was pain in his voice, the kind that didn't come from a single night but from years of silence and wait. "And me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why here? Why me? His gaze locked onto mine, unwavering. Because with you, I feel like I exist. Like I'm not invisible. Like I can just be. The confession hung in the air, heavy, dangerous, and intoxicating all at once. I should have pushed him away, reminded him of boundaries. But I didn't. His honesty tore through the walls I'd built around myself. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that this was all it was. Loneliness, a search for connection. But that message echoed in my mind like a warning bell. He's not who you think he is. Ethan, I said carefully, is there something else? Something you're not telling me? His expression faltered, his lips parting as though the words were on the edge of spilling out. Then, suddenly he shut down. His shoulders stiffened, his gaze dropped. You wouldn't understand, he said. The frustration in his tone cut deeper than the words themselves. I leaned closer, my heart racing. Try me. He looked at me then, really looked, his eyes burning with something sharp and restless. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd tell me everything. But instead, he stood abruptly, pacing the room. I shouldn't be here, he muttered. Yes, you should, I shot back, the urgency in my voice surprising even me. He stopped, turning toward me. The tension between us was unbearable, the silence charged with everything unsaid. And then, without warning, he closed the distance. His face was inches from mine, his breath uneven. Do you want me here? He asked, his voice low and trembling. The world seemed to tilt. My chest ached with the weight of the question. Every rational thought screamed no. But my body betrayed me. I couldn't look away. Yes, I whispered. The single word changed everything. His hand rose, hovering near my face, hesitating as though one touch might shatter us both. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Then, just as his fingers brushed my cheek, a loud crash exploded from outside, a garbage can tipping over, the metallic clang reverberating through the night. We both jolted, our breath caught in our throats. I rushed to the window and pulled back the curtain. My blood ran cold. Ethan's father was in my yard, his face lit by the pale glow of the streetlight. He wasn't picking up the can. He wasn't even moving. He was standing perfectly still, his eyes fixed on my window. And he had seen everything. The sight of Mark standing in my yard froze the air in my lungs. His figure, rigid under the dim streetlight, was terrifying in its stillness. He wasn't just looking at the window, he was looking through it. He had seen Ethan's hand near my face, the closeness between us. And in that instant, I knew everything had changed. Ethan pulled back quickly, his face pale, his breath shallow. He saw, he whispered, panic edging every syllable. I couldn't deny it. The weight of the moment pressed down on us both. My mind raced through possibilities, deny it, confront him, or hide. But none of those options erased the truth. Mark had witnessed what he wasn't supposed to. The sound of the porch steps creaking under his heavy boots echoed like gunshots. Seconds later, there was a pounding on the front door. Open up. Mark's voice thundered through the wood. Ethan grabbed my arm, his grip trembling. Don't, he begged. Please. But we couldn't ignore it. The pounding grew louder, angrier. My heart pounded just as hard in my chest. I finally forced myself to move, each step toward the door like walking into a storm. Ethan stood frozen behind me, his eyes locked on the floor, as though bracing for impact. When I opened the door, Mark's face was a mask of fury. His jaw was clenched, his eyes sharp as knives. He didn't even look at me first. He pushed past me into the house, his gaze locking onto Ethan. What the hell are you doing here? His voice was low, dangerous. Ethan didn't answer. His shoulders hunched, his body shrinking under the weight of his father's anger. Mark turned on me, his eyes blazing. You knew. You let him sneak in here night after night, like some kind of... He cut himself off, shaking his head in disbelief. What the hell were you thinking? I swallowed hard, my voice unsteady but firm. It's not what you think. Mark barked out a bitter laugh. Then tell me what it is. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're crossing a line that should never be crossed. His words hit like blows. Shame burned in my chest, But so did something else, anger. Anger at his assumptions, anger at the fear in Ethan's eyes. "You don't know the whole story," I said, steadying my voice. Mark stepped closer, towering over me. "Then enlighten me." Before I could answer, Ethan spoke, his voice shaking but strong. "Stop." Mark turned sharply toward him. "Stop blaming him," Ethan said, his fists clenched. "This isn't about him. It's about me." "Don't you dare," Mark began, but Ethan cut him off, louder this time. "I come here because I can't breathe in that house. Because every day you tell me who I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to act, and I'm done." The words rang through the room, raw and unfiltered. Mark's face twisted, but he didn't speak. Ethan took a step forward, his eyes burning with defiance and desperation. "You don't see me," he continued. "You see the version of me you want, but not who I am. And when I'm here," his voice cracked, "when I'm here I feel like I exist. I feel like I matter." Silence crashed down. For a moment, all I could hear was Ethan's ragged breathing, the weight of his confession filling every corner of the room. Mark's expression shifted, not softer, but shaken. His jaw flexed, his eyes flickering between me and his son. He opened his mouth, then closed it again as if struggling to find words. I finally stepped in. "He's not sneaking in to do something wrong," I said firmly. "He's searching for space, for someone to listen. And if you can't give him that, he'll keep finding it elsewhere. That's the truth you don't want to face." Mark's eyes snapped to me, his anger simmering. But beneath it I saw something else. A crack, a doubt. He turned back to Ethan, his shoulders stiff. "You think you're grown?" he asked bitterly. "You think you know who you are?" Ethan lifted his chin. "I know enough to know I'm not you." The words landed like a blow. Mark flinched, his face tightening, but he didn't lash out. Instead, he stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, as though holding back a storm. Finally, he muttered, "We'll talk about this at home." He grabbed Ethan's arm, but Ethan pulled back sharply. "I'm not going home with you tonight." Mark's eyes darkened. "You don't have a choice." But Ethan's voice was steady now, resolute. "Yes, I do." The silence stretched, thick with tension. I stood frozen, uncertain if I should intervene, but Ethan's stance was unshakable. For the first time, he wasn't the boy sneaking into my house, hiding in the shadows. He was standing in the light, choosing to fight for himself. Mark's shoulders sagged, the anger draining from his face, leaving something raw and uncertain. He looked at Ethan, then at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw the fear behind his fury, the fear of losing control, of losing his son. Without another word, he turned and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The house was silent again. Ethan stood there, his chest heaving, his hands trembling. Then slowly his eyes met mine. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for dragging you into this." I shook my head. "Don't be sorry. You needed to say it." He looked at me, his eyes glistening. "I don't know what happens now." "Neither do I admitted. "But whatever it is, you're not alone." He exhaled, a shuddering breath, and for the first time that night, a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. It wasn't joy, it was relief. A release from carrying too much for too long. We didn't touch, didn't move closer. But the connection between us was undeniable, carved deeper by the fire we had just walked through. Later, after he left to face whatever storm awaited him, I lay awake replaying it all. His father's rage. Ethan's defiance. The way he chose, finally, to speak his truth. And the way I realized that this wasn't just his journey, it was mine too. Because the truth is, it's not about how young or lost we feel. It's about finding the courage to say, "This is who I am. This is what I need." And maybe that's the hardest thing any of us can do. What would you do if someone you cared about showed up night after night, not to hurt you, not to take from you, but simply because they wanted to be seen? Would you shut the door, or would you let them in, risking the questions, the judgment, the fear? Sometimes the bravest act isn't to fight others, but to fight the silence inside ourselves. If this story touched you, take a moment to reflect on the people in your life who might be carrying something unseen. Be the person who listens, who notices, who make space. And if you want to keep exploring stories that make you feel, think, and question, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications. Because the next story might just change the way you see the world.